have heard all your comments.
Since there were so many requests, I am going to spin a wheel.
And I'm gonna show you how to do this.
May she guide us through the storm.
Woo! Okay, so um, how did I design the small trailer that you guys watch? The Seraphites, right? The scars, um, the cult that is in The Last of Us 2. Um, they are completely based on sort of having a deity, and then they follow that deity, and they don't usually use guns because they think guns are sort of this industrial age thing. Because there are times in the games when we hear the Seraphites, the scars, talk about how they don't like medicine of any kind.
They made narcotics and stimulants here.
Does that trouble you?
People living before the cataclysm had no control. Why else resort to these chemicals?
Don't be quick to judge. Remember, they didn't know the words of our prophet and her wisdom and such things. They weren't beyond saving.
Unlike the wolves.
One day the wolves might see the path. I hope they do it before they're destroyed.
May she guide us through the storm.
They don't like to use guns. They usually use arrows. Um, so learning about the Seraphites, that's the type of people they are. Then moving into sort of where they live. Now thinking about the people, right? These people don't like using technology, guns, medicine. So basically stripping down humans to an age where we didn't have automobiles, phones, guns. And then looking at sort of their villages, we can start to understand that these guys are basically living like hunters. Um, they are living in wood houses, um, and so the architecture is based on how the people's lifestyles are, and um, that's how I understood what path to take when I designed this, right? Of course, they would be based around some kind of water source, which you guys saw. They would have to be, around a forested area for any kind of wood, timber collection for heating in winter. I mean, um, so taking into consideration all that, and then looking at the game itself, um, I was thinking of sort of a rebuilding that happens because the Scars win against the Wolves in the battle. um, sort of rethinking of all the survivors and them going to a, an island somewhere or survivors, basically survivors settling somewhere. And then so I already had made some models um, myself, and I used Rhino for 3D modeling all of those buildings, the two buildings or the three buildings that you can see. And here's how I did it. I basically started out with a path, sort of how the camera is going to move, where I want the camera to sort of move from and look towards. Um, so that line suggests that's how I want the camera to move, and this is kind of important when you look at how a person would travel on your game map. Um, so there's that, and then sort of the squares define the buildings, the building masses where the buildings are going to go. And usually you want your player to either go through a building or be um, at the facade of the building, because the two important things about games are the interiors and the exteriors, um, when it comes to game environment design. And then sort of me myself having some um, you know design ideas where it's like the smaller squares are storage, the bigger squares are buildings, stuff like that. The farms, how close the buildings are to the path, um, all that good stuff. Um, the the main part is the modeling. Um, the modeling has to focus on different materials. So when it comes to materials, we go back to looking at how the people lived, how the people like to live, how they like to store their stuff, what kind of lighting they use, all that. And then that gives me an idea that, okay, so most of their buildings are basic wood. So looking at a lot of wood, um, you know, creating a lot of wooden textures and stuff onto the models. Um, so as you can see here now that I have completed sort of basing the buildings and farms. The farms are the zigzag lines. Those are just for myself, to understand where's what. And then I wanted to give sort of an open space area where, anything can happen, a big bonfire if they wanted to, or public executions, because it seems like they are very much into this primitive idea of um, people paying for their sins and stuff. So yeah, that's the basic sort of plan view of our 3D models. So moving on, I sort of imported my previously built buildings. This video would have gotten way too long if I was to record myself doing all these buildings. But all these buildings are made in Rhino as well. They have been given sort of foundations, studs, everything that a wooden construction needs. Um, and here are some of the sketches that I did previously to sort of get an idea of what the houses I want them to look like. So here's a sketch, sort of a bunch of sketches of different things happening, different angles of those triangular buildings, and then sort of moving into sort of Photoshop and photoshopping, humans and behavior. This idea of behaviorology, which is showing what happens to architecture when people live in it. So all of that has been put into these buildings, and then basically the easiest part is just looking at these sketches, these sections, and just making them 3D. um, And so then I start placing the buildings that I feel like go most with this model and this plan view. And you can sort of see how I select which building I want and I place it. Um, and yeah, so that's how I sort of, you know, got to the idea of architecture of the buildings and sort of how they're placed. Um, so now the main part about then 3D modeling is making sure that all your buildings are placed on the ground and are not floating. A lot of my problems with 3D modeling for games is that you don't want the ground to be flat because that's old games, flat ground, older games. Now games have terraforming and all those things, and that is what I wanted to get right in this. So what I did was I overextended all the sort of foundations. Um, if you've seen the scars in the Seraphite buildings, they are above ground because they live in sort of a forested rain area, and so you don't want water basically to get into your house. So how do you solve that? You put stilts on your house and you make it go up higher. Um, so that is very basic, sort of why these houses are up on a height. And that allows for vegetation to grow under the buildings. And then you have the things with staircases, like over here you can see there's some staircases that don't even touch the plane until I push it up. um, so there's that. And yeah, after that I sort of I'm looking at how the approach is work if the approach is working. Setting everything in plan view doesn't give you an idea of how the buildings interconnect with each other, how the two facades facing each other or talking to each other. So when a player is walking through, are they looking at what your imagination is? So that's that. So you can see I've sort of moved some of the buildings together, much more closer to each other, just in general. So there's that language shown. Um, and then sort of looking at different colors on this, you can see that all these different colors are going to be different textures, different materials, which gives the game sort of its complex look when it's fully rendered. Rendering is easy. It's easier than 3D modeling. I say this because when you 3D model, you have to get everything right. You have to get the texturing right. You have to make sure that whenever a texture is placed onto a surface, that surface has, um, the proper texture size and texture values, and it's faced the right way, and it's not you know if the wood grain for a surface that's horizontal versus one that's vertical, um, those need to you know talk that way. They need to show that that sort of relationship where the wood grain is not going this way and then this way. Instead, it's going this way and up. So yeah, those are some basic things that need to be going into your 3D model. And now here, as you can see, I've put down materials and stuff to those like singular objects, and all the objects have their own materials, and all these materials are now going to sort of show their textures, their lighting and all that. And then basically the power of rendering does everything else, adding in rain, adding in water. Later on, I use Premiere Pro and audio software to generate audios and stuff that um, sort of give all those audios when the camera is taking you through the the scene. And yeah, that is how I created this game scenario for Last of Us 3, the Seraphites, the Scars. Um, if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. You can always just comment down below in the video, or uh, yeah, you can. That's basically where you can ask me questions. Actually, is the comments. I also have an Instagram channel. It's Mr. Monkey Banana. It's the same one as my YouTube channel. You can ask me questions there too if you have any. But yep, I hope this was helpful. I'm not, of course, I'm not a professional at doing this, but I love the idea of creating game scenarios. So if you guys liked this game scenario, give me another one. Comment down below any other game that you would like me to make a scenario for. I don't know, maybe I don't know, Hammerfell, maybe I don't know, Argonia. I've already made Argonia, but I can make a few other ones. It doesn't have to be Elder Scrolls. It can be The Last of Us. It can be, Fallout, Red Dead Redemption 3. I don't know. Whatever you imagine, I can most possibly model and make it. Here's also a bunch of different videos that I've done before for game design, environment design, and I love this sort of idea of creating environments that we can't in real life. So yeah, thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this content. Let me know if you like this content. If you do, I can make more. And yeah, thank you.